Now, David Sirota is at it again with a great new article in the International Business Times. Now, corruption, of course, in the Trump administration is painfully obvious. If you've been paying attention, you know how corrupt they are. For example, you have people from Goldman Sachs deciding on banking policy. You have the former head of ExxonMobil that is heading the State Department. You have the guy who sued the EPA, who is now heading the EPA. It's in your face. It's blatant, okay? Now, the corruption is not only there, but they are reveling in this corruption, and they are not apologetic at all about it. I mean, again, look, when's the last time you heard about Donald Trump draining the swamp? He's not going to drain the swamp because he is the swamp. Now, that's, of course, having major effects on people who are actually supposed to go after the corruption. Sirota writes that one of the Justice Department's top corporate crime watchdogs has now resigned, declaring that she was unable to enforce ethics laws against companies while her own boss in the Trump administration have been engaging in conduct that she said that would not be tolerable even in the biggest businesses. So this is somebody who's looking at corruption and saying, look, these corporations that I'm supposed to oversee and, you know, punish them if they're corrupt, if they're doing criminal activity, how am I supposed to do that when the administration that I serve is doing the same kind of the same kind of thing, the same kind of criminal activity? Come on, man. It makes sense, though. Now, this is, and forgive me if I get this wrong, but it's Hui Chen, who is a former Pfizer and Microsoft lawyer who is also a federal prosecutor. So again, I think this is more of your establishment person, but nonetheless, she had been the department's compliance counsel. Now, she left the department in June and had finally broken her silence about her move in a recent article on LinkedIn. Or at least a recent post on LinkedIn, sorry. Now, she said that trying to hold companies to standards that our current administration is not living up to was creating a cognitive dissonance that I could not overcome. So that's very interesting. Now, she said, to sit across the table from companies and question how committed they were to ethics and compliance felt not only hypocritical, but very much like shuffling the deck chair on the Titanic. Even as I engaged in those questioning and evaluations, on my mind were the numerous lawsuits pending against the President of the United States for everything from violations of the Constitution to conflicts of interest. The ongoing investigations of potentially treasonous conducts, I think that's a little far, but okay, and the investigators and prosecutors fired for the pursuits of principles and facts. Those are conducts I would not tolerate seeing in a company, yet I worked under an administration that engaged in exactly those conduct. I wanted no more part in it. And I don't think any of you guys could actually blame her. Again, this is an administration whose only goal is to break down the government to allow private corporations to loot it. They already, and look, Donald Trump has his own conflicts of interest when it comes to promoting essentially his own businesses and his family businesses over, you know, anything else. Again, Donald Trump is interested in helping Donald Trump. So that's why he's president, and that's what he's doing as president. And obviously that can create a work environment, especially if you're prosecuting corporate criminals. Well, it can create problems when your boss is a corporate criminal. Just saying. Now, here's a little background to Chen. According to David Sirota, she came to the Justice Department back in 2015, after officials there created a compliance counsel position to help guide the agency's enforcement of criminal laws against giant corporations. Now, a department announcement at the time said Chen would guide the fraud section of the criminal division in the prosecution of business entities, including the existence and effectiveness of any compliance program that a company had in place at the time of the conduct giving rise to the prospect of criminal charges, and whether the corporation has taken meaningful remedial action. The release also said Chen would help with the department make sure that corporations who had negotiated agreements with prosecutors were following through on their commitments to stop violating the laws. That would seem like a very, very important position. Now, in recent months, however, Chen had attracted attention from the administration for tweets that were seen critical of the administration. Now, she also said in response to that, while she worked for the Justice Department, that she was warned, hey, you better back off doing your job. This is a tweet from back in May. She said, as a CCO, I had been told to back off investigations. My persistence was met with hostility and the withholding of resources, but not firing. Now, again, this is after the Comey debacle, so I'm pretty sure the Trump administration is like, let's hold off on firing people because that looks really bad. Especially somebody in the corporate crime division. Somebody who listens to corporate criminals. Yeah, let's not, but let's put the pressure on her and make sure that she does not and is not able to do her job. Now, she continues, my ability to do good at a more micro level by exchanging ideas with the compliance community on ways to assess the effectiveness of compliance programs was severely limited. The management of the criminal division, of which the fraud section is a part, has persistently prohibited me from public speaking. So not only did they say, hey, you need to tone it down, you also shouldn't talk about this. You're not allowed to talk about the fact that we've been pressuring you into not aggressively going after these corporations when they break the law. Wonderful. And I wonder why. Well, we all know the answer. Because the Trump administration bathes in corruption. They don't want the watchdogs out there to punish the corporations because that's who they work for. They work for these big companies. And in the case of Trump, Donald Trump, of course, works for himself and for his own business interests. Now, this, of course, is reflected in his actions and his cabinet, as I pointed out before. Again, the good example of Scott Pruitt, who's been suing the EPA, or who had sued the EPA under the Obama administration, is now running it like a pro-business agency. It's the best example of how the corruption is literally in their face. It's in your face. They don't care about ethics at all. They don't care about punishing corporate crime. In fact, they go after people and try to pressure people into resigning when they try to go after corporate crime. They want the watchdogs out of the way. So they go to try to stop them from doing their jobs. And so that they'll do exactly what Ms. Chen had to do. So if you're one of those people who still holds on to the notion that Donald Trump was there to drain the swamp, that he was there to root out the corruption. No. If anything, he's actually doing a service in shining a big spotlight on that corruption through his own corruption and the corruption inside of his cabinet. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.